The rain was coming down sideways, turning the clay on the cliff edge into a slick black grease that offered no traction. My boots were sliding, inch by inch, toward a 300-foot drop into the churning Pacific below. I had one hand wrapped around a jagged root, and the other gripping the wrist of a woman who was dangling in the void. She was screaming, not just from the cold, but from sheer terror, her eyes fixed on something above us on the ridge. Gunnar, my German shepherd, was planted at my side. His paws dug deep into the mud, snarling into the darkness with a ferocity I hadn't heard since my days in the sandbox. A voice drifted down from the road, calm and arrogant, cutting through the storm. "Let her go, old man. You don't know what you're holding on to." He was right. I didn't know that the woman I was risking my life to save was the ghost I'd been running from for 15 years. The single, living reason I had lost my rank, my family, and my soul. The windshield wipers were fighting a losing battle against the storm, slapping back and forth with a frantic rhythm that matched the pounding in my temples. It was 300 hours on a stretch of Highway 101 that most sane drivers avoided during the day, let alone in a gale that was trying to peel the asphalt off the cliffs. The rig, a Peterbilt 379 I'd spent the last decade restoring bolt by bolt, groaned under the wind shear. She was heavy, fully loaded with lumber bound for Oregon, but tonight she felt like a toy boat in a bathtub. I downshifted, letting the Jake brake rattle its low, guttural protest against the grade. The cab was warm, smelling of stale coffee, diesel, and the wet fur of the animals sleeping on the passenger seat. Gunnar, 85 pounds of black and tan muscle, was curled into a tight donut, his nose tucked under his tail. He was the only co-driver I allowed these days. He didn't talk, he didn't complain about the radio station, and he possessed a radar for trouble that beat any electronic sensor on the market. We'd been together since he was a pup, two broken things that found a way to fit together. I took a sip of lukewarm coffee from my thermos, my eyes scanning the darkness beyond the headlights. The beams cut through the driving rain, illuminating flashes of twisted cypress trees and the jagged rock face on my right. To my left, there was nothing but the abyss, an endless drop into the ocean. It was nights like this that the memories usually came creeping in. The ghosts of a life I used to have before the court-martial, before the divorce, before I became just another name on a manifest. I pushed the thoughts away, focusing on the white line. Stay between the lines, keep the wheels turning. That was the mission now. Gunnar's head snapped up. It wasn't a slow wake-up. 1 second he was asleep, the next he was rigid, his ears pricked forward, staring intently at the darkness of the passenger window. A low rumble started deep in his chest, a vibration I could feel through the seat. "What is it, boy?" I murmured, keeping my eyes on the road. "Just the wind." He didn't relax. He stood up on the seat, his claws clicking against the leather, and pressed his nose to the cold glass. He let out a sharp, urgent bark. I eased off the throttle. Gunnar didn't bark at the wind. He didn't bark at deer. In the 6 years we'd been running heavy haul, he'd only reacted like this 3 times. The first time, my brakes had been tampered with at a truck stop in Nevada. The second time, we'd walked into a robbery in progress in Detroit. I didn't know what the third time was yet, but I wasn't going to ignore it. I scanned the mirrors. Nothing behind me but wet asphalt and darkness. I looked ahead. The road curved sharply around a blind bend called Devil's Elbow. As the headlights swept across the curve, I saw it. Skid marks, fresh ones. They were black streaks, cutting diagonally across the wet pavement, tearing through the gravel shoulder and vanishing off the edge where the guardrail had been sheared away. The metal was twisted outward, jagged teeth pointing toward the ocean. "Damn it," I whispered. I slammed on the brakes, careful not to jackknife on the slick surface. The rig shuddered, the tires searching for grip as I brought 70,000 pounds to a halt 100 yards past the break in the rail. I popped the hazards on, the amber strobes pulsing against the cliff face. "Stay," I told Gunnar, grabbing my heavy coat and the maglite from the door pocket. Gunnar ignored the command. He leaped over the gear shift and was at the driver's side door before I could open it, whining and pacing. He knew. He sensed something I couldn't see yet. I sighed and opened the door. "All right, but you stick close." The wind hit us like a physical blow. It screamed off the ocean, carrying the salt spray up the cliff to mix with the rain. I clicked the flashlight on, the beam cutting a narrow tunnel through the deluge. Gunnar was already moving, nose to the ground, tracking something through the mud on the shoulder. He wasn't tracking the car, he was tracking a scent. I followed him to the edge of the broken guardrail. I shone the light down. It was a terrifying drop. About 50 feet down, a sedan was wedged against a cropping of rock and scrub pine, teetering precariously. The front end was crumpled like a soda can. The headlights were dead, but the dome light was flickering on and off, a weak heartbeat in the dark. "Hello," I shouted, my voice snatched away by the wind. "Is anyone down there?" No answer. Gunnar was pacing the edge, barking rhythmically, looking down and then back at me. Then he stopped barking and started to whine, a high-pitched, desperate sound. He wasn't looking at the car anymore. He was looking at a ledge about 20 feet below us, off to the right of the wreck. I moved the light. There, clinging to a cluster of exposed roots protruding from the clay, was a figure, a woman. She was soaked through, her hair plastered to her face, wearing nothing but a torn evening dress that offered zero protection against the storm. She wasn't moving, just clinging to the mud, paralyzed. "I see her, Gunnar. Good boy," I said, my heart hammering. I ran back to the truck, unlocked the side box and grabbed my heavy-duty tow strap and a coil of rope. I didn't have climbing gear, just trucker ingenuity and desperation. I sprinted back to the edge. "Ma'am," I bellowed, cupping my hands. "Don't move, I'm coming down." She looked up. Even from this distance, in the chaotic strobing of my hazard lights and the flashlight beam, I saw the sheer terror in her face. But it wasn't the blank look of shock. It was the look of hunted prey. She wasn't looking at me with relief. She was looking past me toward the road. I tied the rope around the base of a sturdy-looking guardrail post that was still intact. I looped the other end around my waist, testing the knot. It wasn't OSHA-approved, but it would hold. "Watch the top, Gunnar," I ordered. The dog took a position at the anchor point, his body low, eyes scanning the road. He was in guardian mode. I went over the edge. The descent was a nightmare. The mud was like ice. Every time I found a foothold, the earth gave way, sending showers of rocks clattering down onto the car below. The rain was blinding. I slid more than I climbed, my boots digging furrows into the cliffside, the rope burning my waist. I reached the ledge. It was barely 2 feet wide. I unclipped the rope from my waist, a stupid risk, but I needed the length to reach her, and anchored myself by jamming my boot into a crevice. "Take my hand," I said, reaching out. She flinched away, pressing her back against the wet clay. "No, he's still here. He'll see you." Her voice was trembling so hard the words were barely intelligible. "Who's still here?" I asked, scanning the ridge above. "You were in an accident, ma'am. You're safe now." "Oh, it wasn't an accident," she sobbed, clutching her side. I saw blood seeping through her fingers. "He ran me off. He watched me go over. He's coming to check." A chill that had nothing to do with the rain went down my spine. This wasn't a rescue anymore. It was an extraction. "Okay," I said, dropping my voice to that low, commanding tone I used to use with my squad. "Look at me. Look at my eyes. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. My name is Jack. What's yours?" She hesitated, shivering violently. "Elena. My name is Elena." Elena. The name hit me with a dull thud, triggering a synapse somewhere deep in the locked basement of my memory, but I couldn't place it. Not now. "Okay, Elena. We need to move. That car down there is going to slip, Gunnar," I shouted, the wind tearing the name from my lips before I could even hear it myself. "Guard, stay!" The bark that answered me wasn't the playful yip he gave when I grabbed the leash, nor the warning woo-woo he offered when a stranger got too close to the rig at a rest stop. This was a guttural, wet snarl that sounded like tearing metal, a sound that meant only one thing: threat. Close. I looked up, squinting against the deluge. The rain was changing. The heavy, stinging drops were turning slushy, white, and thick. The temperature had dropped 10 degrees in 10 seconds. In flash freeze, the Pacific storm was colliding with a cold front coming off the mountains, and we were trapped in the chaotic seam between them. Within moments, the black rain was swallowed by a blinding white curtain. A blizzard. On the coast. It was rare, freakish, and exactly the kind of bad luck that had followed me for the last decade. "He's got a gun," Elena whispered. She was pressed so hard against the cliff face, she looked like she was trying to merge with the clay. Her teeth were chattering with a violence that shook her whole frame. He said he'd put me in the ground. "Nobody is putting you anywhere but in the cab of my truck," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. I unclipped the spare carabiner from my belt. "Listen to me. We have to move now. The snow is going to make this clay slicker than grease. If we wait, we freeze. If we climb, he might shoot. I'll take the bullet. You take the rope." Why?" she choked out, looking at me with eyes that were hollowed out by trauma. "You don't even know me." I paused for a second, wiping the slush from my eyes. She was right. I didn't know her, but looking at her, the terrified angle of her jaw, the way she held her injured arm, I felt a phantom ache in my chest, a memory of a courtroom, a woman crying on a stand, a gavel banging down like a gunshot, guilty. I pushed it down. "I'm a trucker, ma'am. We don't leave people behind." But I cinched the rope around her waist, checking the knot twice. My fingers were numb, clumsy sausages fumbling with the wet hemp. Above us, Gunner's barking escalated into a frenzy. "Hey!" A voice drifted down, muffled by the thickening snow. It was a man's voice, smooth, educated, and layered with a cruelty that made my skin crawl. "You down there, truck driver? You're making a mistake. Walk away. Tell the cops you found an empty car. I'll make it worth your while. 10,000 cash right now." Elena whimpered, burying her face in my shoulder. 10,000? I yelled back, positioning myself between her and the ridge. "That's a lot of money for an empty car." "She's sick," the voice yelled, straining over the howling wind. "She's delusional. She needs to be in a hospital, not a big rig. Send her up. I'm her husband. I'm trying to help her." "He's lying," Elena gasped. "He's not my husband. He owns me. He thinks he owns me." I looked at the rope, then up at the lip of the cliff. The snow was coming down in sheets now, horizontal white streaks in the beam of my maglite. Visibility was dropping to 0. Good. It meant he couldn't see us clearly either. "Climb," I ordered her. "I'm right behind you." "I can't," she sobbed. "Yes, you can. Move." She reached for a root, her hand trembling. She pulled. I placed my hand on the small of her back and shoved, taking her weight. We moved inch by agonizing inch. The cliff was alive, the mud shifting and groaning under our weight. The snow was relentless, coating us in a layer of white ice. My boots scrabbled for purchase, finding nothing but slurry. I slammed the toe of my boot into the clay, kicking steps for her. "Keep going," I gritted out. "Don't look down. Look at the bumper of my truck. Focus on the chrome." We were 10 feet from the top when the first shot rang out. Crack. It wasn't the boom of a shotgun. It was the sharp snap of a handgun. A 9mm maybe. The bullet hit the clay 3 inches from my left hand, spraying mud and ice into my face. Elena screamed and froze. "Don't stop!" I roared. "Gunner, kill!" I hated that command. I hadn't used it since a patrol in Kandahar when a stray dog we'd adopted had to defend our flank. But I knew Gunner. He wouldn't kill a man unless he had to, but he would absolutely make that man wish he was dead. Above us, the snarling turned into a roar. I heard a man shout in surprise, then a thud, followed by a string of curses. "Get off me, stupid mutt!" The shooting stopped. Gunner had engaged. I surged upward, adrenaline burning through the fatigue in my muscles. I practically threw Eleanor over the final lip of the cliff. She scrambled onto the gravel shoulder, collapsing into the slush. I vaulted over the guardrail behind her, landing in a crouch, my hand going instantly to the tire iron I kept clipped to my belt loop. The scene on the road was chaos. The blizzard had turned the world into a white void. My truck was a hulking shadow, its amber lights pulsing rhythmically, illuminating the swirling snow. And there, in the middle of the road, was the battle. A man in a beige trench coat was spinning in circles, flailing a pistol. Gunner had him by the forearm, the gun arm. The dog's jaws were locked, his body dead weight, dragging the man's aim down toward the asphalt. The man was screaming, kicking at Gunner's ribs with polished dress shoes. "Let him go!" the man shrieked, panic cracking his smooth voice. He swung the gun wildly, trying to aim at the dog attached to his own arm. I didn't hesitate, I didn't think, I just moved. I covered the 20 feet between us in 3 strides. The man saw me coming, a 6'4" wall of wet canvas and rage, and his eyes went wide. He tried to twist the gun toward me, but Gunner yanked hard, pulling him off balance. I stepped into his personal space, grabbed the barrel of the gun with my left hand, ignoring the searing heat of the metal, and twisted it up and away. With my right hand, I drove a short, piston-like punch into his solar plexus. He folded like a lawn chair. The air left his lungs in a whooshing gasp. The gun clattered to the pavement. "Gunner, ouse!" I commanded, my voice low and lethal. The dog released instantly, backing away, but keeping his teeth bared, a low growl rumbling in his throat. He positioned himself between the man and Elena, a living shield. The man fell to his knees, gasping, clutching his stomach. He looked up at me, his face twisting from pain to a sneer. He was handsome in a slick, politician kind of way. Expensive haircut ruined by the snow, expensive coat covered in mud. You have no idea," he wheezed. "You stupid, redneck, trash." I picked up the gun, a Glock 17, nice piece. I ejected the magazine, pocketed it, and racked the slide to clear the chamber. The round spun out into the snow. I tossed the empty weapon into the ditch. "You're right," I said, looking down at him. "I'm just a trash hauler. But right now, I'm the trash hauler who has your gun, and you're the guy sitting in the mud in a blizzard." I looked over at Eleanor. She was standing by the truck, shivering uncontrollably, her eyes locked on the man on the ground. She wasn't looking at him with fear anymore. She was looking at him with something worse, recognition. "Get in the truck, Elena," I said. "Jack," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. That's Marcus Vane." The name meant nothing to me. "I don't care if he's the King of England. Get in the truck." "No." Vane laughed, a wet, hacking sound. He struggled to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. "You really don't know, do you? You don't know who she is." He looked at me, his eyes gleaming with malicious delight. The snow was piling up on his shoulders. "Look at her, Jack," he mocked. "Really look at her. Take a good look at the damsel you just saved." I turned. Eleanor was bathed in the amber glow of the marker lights. The snow was matting her dark hair, framing her face. She looked younger than I thought, maybe 30. High cheekbones, a small scar above her left eyebrow, and those eyes, huge, dark, terrified eyes. I froze. The cold that washed over me had nothing to do with the blizzard. I did know those eyes. Flashback. 15 years ago, a courtroom in San Diego. The air conditioning hummed too loud. My dress uniform felt too tight. I was standing at attention, my career ending one sentence at a time. The prosecutor was pointing at a witness, a teenage girl, 16, maybe 17, scared, crying. She was the only one who had seen what happened that night in the alley behind the bar. She was the only one who could have cleared me, proved I was defending the kid, not attacking him. "Did Sergeant Mercer provoke the altercation?" the JAG officer had asked. The girl had looked at me, right at me, with those same big, dark, terrified eyes, and then she looked at the floor. "Yes," she had whispered, "he started it." 3 words, that was all it took. Discharge, pension gone. Wife filed for divorce 3 months later because she couldn't handle the shame of being married to a violent felon. I lost the house. I lost custody. I lost the life I had built for 20 years. I stared at the woman by my truck. The teenager was gone, replaced by a woman worn down by life, but the eyes were the same. Elena, I breathed. Elena. Cortez? She flinched as if I'd slapped her. She wrapped her arms around herself, looking down at the snow. I didn't have a choice, she whispered. They threatened my brother. They said they'd kill him. Vane laughed again. Oh, this is rich. This is poetic. The hero saves the traitor. You know, she's been running from her past for a long time, Jack. Just like you. My hands curled into fists. The rage that flared in my gut was white hot. I had pulled her off a cliff. I had risked my life, risked my dog, for the woman who had ruined me. I looked at her, shivering, broken, bleeding. And then I looked at Vane, smirking in the snow. Vane took a step forward, misreading my silence. See, she's poisoned, Jack. Hand her over. We'll call it even. I'll forget the dog bit me. You drive away. You get your revenge right here by doing nothing. It was a tempting offer. The darkest part of me, the part that sat alone in diners at 2 a.m., wondering why, wanted to get in the cab and drive. Just leave them both to the storm. Let the blizzard bury the past. Gunnar growled. He wasn't growling at Vane this time. He had moved. He was standing next to Elena, leaning his weight against her leg. He looked up at me, his amber eyes clear and unjudging. He didn't know about court-martials. He didn't know about lies. He just knew that she was hurt, she was cold, and she was part of the pack now because I had said so. He nudged her hand with his wet nose. That small gesture broke the spell. It shattered the rage. I looked at Vane. You think I'm going to give her to you? She ruined your life, Vane said, his smile faltering. Maybe, I said, stepping toward him. The snow crunched under my boots. But that was 15 years ago. Tonight she's just a passenger, and nobody touches my passengers. Vane's eyes darted to the ditch where I'd thrown the gun. He tensed, ready to run for it. Don't, I warned. The dog is faster than you, and the blizzard is getting worse. If you run, you freeze. If you stay, you freeze. I turned my back on him, the ultimate insult. I walked over to Elena. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She was trembling so hard she could barely stand. Get in, I said quietly. Jack, get in. I opened the passenger door. Gunnar hopped up first, shaking his coat and spraying water everywhere, then settled onto the floorboard, leaving the seat for her. Eleanor climbed in, her movements stiff and jerky. I slammed the door shut, sealing her in the warmth. I walked around to the driver's side, stopping to look at Vane one last time. He was standing alone in the swirling white, a silhouette of arrogance slowly being erased by the storm. You're making a mistake, he screamed. You don't know what she stole from me. She stole a career from me, I muttered to myself. Join the club. I climbed into the cab. The silence was deafening after the roar of the wind. The heater was blasting. The smell of wet dog and ozone filled the air. Elena was huddled in the corner of the seat, as far away from me as possible, staring at the dash. Gunnar had his head on her knee, his eyes closed. I put the truck in gear. The big diesel engine roared to life, a comforting mechanical beast. I released the parking brake. Where are we going? Elena asked, her voice small. I didn't look at her. I watched the snow swirling in the headlights. North, away from him, away from this storm. And then I checked my mirrors. Vane was gone, swallowed by the whiteout. And then, I said, shifting gears, the truck lurching forward, we're going to have a long talk about 2009. I merged back onto the highway, the tires crunching through the fresh powder. The blizzard was intensifying, the world reducing to the 20 feet of road in front of my hood. I was driving a 70-foot rig through a white hell with a ghost in the passenger seat and a German shepherd who had more moral compass than the both of us combined. Just another Tuesday. The cab of a Peterbilt at night is usually my sanctuary. It's a small, self-contained world of glowing gauges, humming diesel, and the rhythmic thrum of 18 wheels eating up pavement. But tonight, the sanctuary felt like a prison cell. The air was thick, suffocating, charged with 15 years of unsaid words and the metallic tang of adrenaline. Outside, the world had ceased to exist. The blizzard had erased the mountains, the ocean, and the sky. There was only the white tunnel of the headlights, the snow flying at the windshield like hyperspace stars, and the treacherous slick of ice beneath the steers. I was doing 30 miles an hour in a zone where I'd usually do 55, my hands light on the wheel, feeling for the slip, that sickening moment when 70,000 pounds of lumber decides it wants to lead instead of follow. Inside, the only sound was the heater blasting on high and the rhythmic shh-thump of the wipers. Elena hadn't moved. She was still pressed against the passenger door, shivering in her wet dress. My heavy coat swallowed her small frame. Gunnar was the only bridge between us. The big German shepherd had abandoned his post on the floorboard and had somehow maneuvered himself so his front paws were on the seat, his heavy head resting squarely on Elena's lap. She was absent-mindedly burying her fingers in his fur, a reflex born of trauma. Every time her hand stopped, Gunnar would nudge her wrist with his wet nose, forcing her to keep petting him, keep grounding herself in the here and now. He knew she was falling apart. He was holding her together. I downshifted for a hairpin turn, the engine growling. I watched the RPMs, deliberately avoiding looking at her. But I could see her reflection in the dark side window, the scar over her eye, the terror that hadn't left her face. "Say it," I said. My voice sounded rusty, harsh. She flinched. Gunnar's ears swiveled toward me, a low rumble in his throat, a warning. "Easy, boss." "Say what?" she whispered. "You know what. Tell me why." I kept my eyes on the road, fighting a gust of wind that tried to push the trailer into the other lane. "You stood there. You took the oath, you looked me in the eye, and you lied. You sent a good man to the brig, and you destroyed a career. Why?" She started to cry again, silent, shaking sobs that racked her body. "I was 17, Jack." "I don't care if you were 7, I snapped. The bitterness was a poison I'd been drinking for a decade. Spitting it out now burned. "The truth doesn't have an age limit. That kid, the one I pulled off you in the alley, he was the son of a senator. I know that now. I didn't know it then. I just saw a punk hurting a girl. I did my job. And because you lied, he walked, and I got dishonored." He didn't just walk," she said, her voice trembling. He became this." "He became what?" "Marcus Vane." I tapped the brakes, the trailer pushing hard against the kingpin. "The guy back there, the one in the trench coat, that was the kid from the alley?" "Yes." I tightened my grip on the wheel until my knuckles turned white. It made sick sense. The arrogance, the entitlement, the way he looked at me like I was hired help. He had grown up, gotten richer, gotten meaner, but the rot was the same. "So you married him?" I let out a dark, incredulous laugh. "You cleared him of assault and then you married him? That's a hell of a thank you note." "I didn't marry him because I loved him," she screamed. The outburst was sudden, shocking. Even Gunnar lifted his head, startled. "I married him because he had Matteo." The name hung in the air, suspended in the heat of the cab. "Who is Matteo?" I asked, my voice dropping. "My brother," she wept. "He was 12. That night, inside the club, Vane's friends had him. They took him. Before the police arrived, Vane leaned over to me, right before you stepped in, and he whispered it. You say a word against me, and your brother disappears. You do exactly what I say, forever, and he lives." She turned to me, her eyes wild, pleading. "What was I supposed to do, Jack? I was a kid. You were a soldier. You were strong. I thought you could take the hit. I thought you'd get a slap on the wrist. I didn't know they'd take everything from you. I swear to God, I didn't know." I stared at the white road. The anger was still there, a hard knot in my chest, but the foundation was cracking. She sacrificed me to save her brother. "Where is Matteo now?" I asked. She slumped back against the seat, defeat washing over her. Dead. He died 3 years ago. Overdose. Vane got him hooked on the stuff he moves. Kept him close, kept him dependent, so he always had leverage on me. When Matteo died, the leverage was gone. So you ran, I said. I tried. I took his ledger, the real one, the one that shows where the money comes from, the trafficking, the bribes. I thought it was my insurance policy, but he caught me. He ran me off the road tonight to get it back. The ledger, I said, my eyes flicking to her coat. Do you have it? She patted the pocket of her torn dress beneath my coat. It's on a flash drive. Waterproof. It's the only thing I grabbed. I let out a long breath. The pieces were clicking into place. This wasn't a domestic dispute. This wasn't just a rescue. I was transporting a federal witness and the evidence to take down a crime lord who had been haunting my life for 15 years. Gunnar suddenly stood up. He didn't just lift his head this time. He scrambled to his feet on the passenger seat, his claws digging into the upholstery, his nose pressed against the rear window of the sleeper berth. The sleeper curtain was open, and he was staring back into the dark void behind the trailer. A deep, vibrating growl started in his chest. It was the sound of a predator sensing a challenger. "What is it, boy?" I asked, checking my mirrors. I saw nothing but the swirling snow and the blackness. The storm was a wall. "He sees something," Elena whispered, clutching Gunnar's collar. "He senses him." "Impossible," I said. "We left Vane on foot. He's 5 miles back, freezing in a ditch." "Vane never travels alone," she said, her voice barely a breath. "He has a convoy. Always." I checked the mirror again. I leaned forward, squinting. There, 2 faint yellow pinpricks in the distance. They were cutting through the snow, moving fast. Too fast for the conditions. They bobbed and weaved, growing larger. "Headlights," I said tight. "Moving fast." Gunnar barked, a sharp warning crack that echoed in the small cab. "Is it him?" Elena asked, shrinking down. "It's an SUV, lifted, probably 4-wheel drive, and he's closing." I looked at the speedometer. We were doing 35. If I pushed it to 40 on this ice, with this load, we were risking a jackknife. But if that was Vane, doing 35 was suicide. "Hang on," I said. I shifted up. The turbo whined higher. The truck surged forward, heavy and reluctant. The trailer swayed, the rear tires fighting for grip. I corrected with small, rapid movements of the steering wheel. Left, right, hold, left. It was a dance I'd learned on the ice roads of Alaska, a dance where one wrong step meant death. The lights behind us grew brighter. They were high beams, blindingly white. They weren't just following, they were hunting. "He's going to ram us," Elena said. "He can try. He's 4 tons. I'm 40. Physics is on my side." "He doesn't care about physics. He has guns, Jack." Crack. The back of the trailer sparked. A split second later, the sound reached us, a distinct pop over the roar of the wind. "He's shooting at the tires," I yelled. "Get down on the floor! Gunnar, down!" Gunnar didn't listen. He positioned himself over Elena, shielding her body with his own. He was barking furiously at the rear of the cab. I swerved, weaving the truck across both lanes to make the tires a harder target. The trailer swung wide, blocking the road. "Come on, you son of a—" I muttered, watching the mirror. The SUV surged. It was a black Range Rover, outfitted with a brush guard and off-road lights. It pulled out into the oncoming lane, accelerating to pull alongside the cab. I saw the window roll down. I saw the muzzle flash. Glass shattered. The side mirror on the driver's side exploded. "Damn it!" I ducked, keeping one hand on the wheel. "Jack!" Elena screamed. The SUV was right beside my door now. I could see the driver, a thug in a beanie. And in the passenger seat, face twisted in rage, was Vane. He was holding a submachine gun. This wasn't a warning. This was an execution. I had one card to play, the trucker shield. "Hold on!" I roared. I didn't steer away from them. I steered into them. I cranked the wheel hard to the left. The massive front tire of the Peterbilt, taller than the SUV's hood, drifted into their lane. The heavy steel step and the fuel tank became a battering ram. Vane's eyes went wide. The driver tried to swerve, but on the ice, at 40 miles an hour, there was no room. Crunch. The sound was sickening, metal on metal. My rig shuddered but held its line. The Range Rover was swatted like a fly. It spun out, careening off my front bumper, sliding sideways across the ice. It hit the slush on the shoulder, tripped and rolled. I watched in the remaining mirror as the headlights tumbled over and over, disappearing into the darkness of the ditch behind us. I fought the wheel, the trailer trying to whip around and crush the cab. Ease off, don't brake. Steer into the slide. The rig drifted sideways, skating across the ice. For a heartbeat we were floating, weightless. Then the tires bit into a patch of gravel. The truck jerked straight. I exhaled a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Got 'em," I whispered. "Are they dead?" Elena asked from the floor. "I don't know, and I'm not stopping to check." I kept the hammer down, putting distance between us and the wreck. But my heart was pounding a warning rhythm. Vane was rich, Vane was connected, and Vane was still alive back there. Men like him didn't stop until they won, or they died. "We need to get off this road," I said. "He'll call ahead. He'll have state troopers or more goons waiting at the next town." "Where can we go?" Elena asked, pulling herself up. She looked at me, and for the first time the fear in her eyes was mixed with something else. Awe, and maybe trust. "There's a logging road about 5 miles up," I said, thinking fast. "Old Scow Trail. It cuts through the forest and dumps out near a way station where I know the master. It's unpaved, it's steep, and in this snow, it's probably impassable." I looked at Gunnar. He was standing again, licking a small cut on Elena's cheek, where a piece of glass had grazed her. He looked at me and gave a short, affirmative bark. "Impassable for a Range Rover," I corrected myself. "But this old girl, she was built for the mud." I looked at Eleanor. "You ready to trust me? For real this time?" She reached out and placed her hand on my arm. Her grip was firm. "I trust you, Jack. I'm sorry it took 15 years. Better late than never." I grunted. I saw the marker for the logging road. I killed the headlights to go dark, relying on the ambient moonlight reflecting off the snow and Gunnar's keen eyes. I slowed down, swung the wheel, and the Peterbilt left the highway, plunging into the deep, untouched snow of the forest. We were off the grid, but we weren't safe yet. The silence of the woods was heavy, and I knew, with the instinct of a soldier who had been hunted before, that the night was far from over. Vane wouldn't stop. He couldn't stop, because he knew that as long as this truck was moving, his life was over. And he was right. The logging road was a tunnel of ancient pines and untouched snow, a white labyrinth where the only law was physics and grip. For an hour I fought the wheel, wrestling 70,000 pounds of steel through mud that wanted to swallow us whole. Gunnar didn't sleep. He sat rigid between the seats, his head swiveling, guarding the rear window, a silent sentry ensuring the darkness didn't follow us. We emerged just before dawn near the state line, rolling into the gravel lot of a way station that was officially closed but occupied by 3 black SUVs and a cluster of state troopers. I had made the call on the sat phone 10 miles back. I didn't call 911. I called a number an old friend in the Corps had given me years ago. "For when the local law can't be trusted," he'd said. I pulled the brake valve. Hiss. The sound was final. "They're here," I said, looking at Elena. She looked at the convoy of federal agents stepping out into the biting wind. Then she looked at me. The fear was gone, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the flash drive. "This clears you too," she said softly. "I made sure of it. There's a file on there, a confession. I recorded it years ago, just in case. It tells the truth about the alley, about the court-martial, about everything." I stared at the small piece of plastic. 15 years of shame, of lost rank, of being looked at like a criminal by my own ex-wife, all held in something the size of a thumb. "I don't need it," I lied. "Take it," she insisted, pressing it into my calloused palm. "Please. It's the only way I can pay for the ride." I closed my hand around it. It felt light. We climbed out. The wind had died down, leaving the world silent and frozen. Gunnar hopped out and immediately went to Elena, leaning his full weight against her legs one last time. She knelt in the slush, wrapping her arms around his thick neck, burying her face in his fur. The dog didn't pull away. He stood like a statue, absorbing her grief, offering that quiet, heavy comfort only a dog can give. "Thank you, Gunnar," she whispered. She stood up and looked at me. The agents were waiting. "Jack," she started, her voice cracking. You were 17, I said, cutting her off. The anger I had carried for a decade was gone, left somewhere back in the blizzard on the logging road. You were a kid protecting your family. I would have done the same for my squad. But I ruined your life. I looked at my truck, the chrome shining under the floodlights, the mud caked on the fenders, the dent where Vane's SUV had smashed into the fuel tank. I looked at Gunnar, who was looking up at me with that calm amber gaze. "My life isn't ruined, Elena," I said. And for the first time in years, I meant it. It's just different. I hold truth now. "That's enough," she nodded, tears freezing on her cheeks. She turned and walked toward the agents. They surrounded her, a wall of suits and badges, finally giving her the protection she should have had 15 years ago. One of the agents, a grey-haired man, nodded at me. "We found the Range Rover," he called out. "Vane is alive, broken legs, hypothermia, but alive. He's singing like a bird." I didn't answer. I just tipped my cap. I whistled for Gunnar. "Load up, partner." We climbed back into the cab. It felt different now, lighter. The ghost that had been riding in the passenger seat for 15 years was gone. I put the truck in gear, checking the mirrors. The sun was just cresting the mountains, turning the snow-covered peaks a brilliant burning gold. I looked at the flash drive sitting in the cup holder. I rolled down the window. The cold air rushed in, sharp and clean. I didn't need a file to tell me who I was. I didn't need a judge to tell me I was honorable. I knew. Gunnar knew, and the woman safe in that government car knew. I picked up the drive, weighed it in my hand for a second, and then I tucked it into my pocket. Maybe I'd mail it to my ex-wife. Maybe I wouldn't. It didn't matter anymore. I merged onto the empty highway, the tires singing on the wet asphalt. Gunnar circled 3 times on the passenger seat, let out a long, contented sigh, and laid his head down. "Let's go home, boy," I whispered. We drove into the sunrise, just a man, a dog, and the open road. And for the first time in a long time, the road didn't look like an escape route. It looked like freedom. We all have a mile marker we call home. Drop yours in the comments before we hit the road on this one. And while you're there, tap that subscribe button. It helps us keep the engine running and bring you more stories about the heroes hiding in plain sight. See you at the next stop.